Okay, now, chapter 14 deals with discrimination. You definitely are going to get questions on discrimination. Here's the thing that you need to know. Everyone has a right to live wherever they want within their financial ability. That's all there is to it, nothing more. Now, um, in, well, there's a tremendous amount of discrimination that does go on in real estate. And if for some reason you've never been exposed to any type of discrimination, okay, wait till you get your real estate license. It comes from close family members and friends, and they say, I'm going to list my home with you because I know you're going to do the right thing, not bring those people that we don't want in that property, people we don't want in the neighborhood. This is a federal felony, and you will go to jail for this. So now, by the way, you lose your license automatically if you're found guilty of discrimination. Let's go on to federal laws. The first law you need to know, second paragraph from the bottom, highlight, put an X by it. In 1866, they passed a law you cannot discriminate against race. Race is the one and only protected category there. This is the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, passed right after the Civil War. Again, you cannot discriminate against race. Now, the second year date you need to know, it's on the next page, is called Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. It's more commonly called the Federal Fair Housing Law, and it states that you cannot discriminate based on, you can put an X by the next two paragraphs, race, color, religion, national origin, and sex. Now, sex was added in 1974, but as far as you are concerned, it's part of the 1968 law. Someone has a question here. The HIV thing we talked about. That falls under the 1988 amendment, which is coming up next. Okay, 1 second, it's going to come up. The third date you need to know, 1988, here it is, put an X by that one. Says you cannot discriminate against, there was an amendment added, you cannot discriminate against mental or physical disability or familial status. Now, mental or physical disability refers to someone who lost one or more of their major life functions, including people who have AIDS. So there are actually 4 year dates you need to be familiar with, okay? The 1978, lead-based paint, anything built before 1978. And then these other 3 dates you got to know. So let me write them down for you on exactly what you need to know. Let's go to another blank canvas. So, as I said, 1978, lead-based paint. The other dates you need to know, 1866. You cannot discriminate against race. Race is the one and only protected category. 1968, cannot discriminate against race, color, religion, national origin, and sex. Sex refers to gender, okay, not frequency, gender. And then in 1988, there's an amendment added to the 1968 law that says you cannot discriminate against mental or physical disability and familial status. Mental or physical disability, again, refers to someone who lost one or more of their major life functions, including people who have AIDS, and Familiar status refers to a child under the age of 18 living with a parent or guardian, or a woman who happens to be pregnant. So, actually, I should go back down. I want you to know these dates. Be really familiar with them, okay? Now, let's go on to the last paragraph of 299, familiar status. Again, is someone under the age of 18 living with a parent or guardian, or a woman who happens to be pregnant, which is on the next page. You cannot discriminate against them. A couple paragraphs down on page 300, disability. Disability is mental or physical impairment that limits someone's having to limits someone's capability to have full enjoyment of life. So now, the next paragraph where it says landlords, highlight, put an X by that. Landlords must make reasonable accommodations to existing policies, practices, or services to permit persons with disabilities to have equal enjoyment of the premises. The landlord must allow a tenant to make reasonable accommodations to the premises. They need the grab bars in the bathroom. They need the bathroom door to swing both ways. Lower the light switches. They a kitchen big enough where they can maneuver their wheelchair if that's the situation. Who pays for these modifications? Tenant pays for them. They cannot burden the landlord. Now, if a tenant rents an apartment from me and he has a disability, has to make reasonable modification, tenant has to pay for those. Now, those modifications, once they're done, me as a landlord, I can have the tenant pay me money to hold on to restore the property to the way it was, or I could keep those modifications. Why? Anytime you add anything to real property, becomes part of that real property. Now, the landlord must make reasonable modifications too. I have a building, no pets allowed in my building. Someone has a service animal. I must allow that person with the service animal into that building. I cannot charge a tenant with a disability more rent than anybody else for the same size unit. I cannot charge a tenant with disability more security deposit than anyone else for the same size unit. Cannot charge a tenant who has a support animal a pet deposit. You cannot do that. So now, in fact, a couple paragraphs down, landlord may not increase the customary required security deposit or rent with anyone that has a disability, not for the same size unit. Now, it's just something that just kind of boggles me a little bit. Here, let me go back to this. In 1868, federal law says you cannot discriminate against race, color, religion, national origin, and sex. You cannot discriminate against those protected categories. But attached to this law, there are some exemptions where you can discriminate against those protected categories once every 2 years. Once every 2 years. I think it's stupid because who keeps track of it? I have no idea. No idea. So, but that's federal law. Cannot discriminate against race, color, religion, national origin, and sex, but you are allowed under certain circumstances to discriminate against those protected categories once every 2 years. So on the next page, on 301 at the top, Fair Housing Act exempts, and you can highlight all these bullets here, owner-occupied buildings with no more than 4 units. They can allow one discrimination every 2 years. Single-family housing sold or rented without the use of a real estate licensee, and housing operated by organizations and private clubs that limit occupancy to its members. Let me explain that one before I go on. Let's say a church owns an apartment building. The church could say only members of our congregation can live in this building at a discounted rent. They could do that as long as they allow anyone to join the church. The fourth bullet. Now, this is regarding the sale or rental of a single family home. They are exempt once every 2 years against those protected categories. If the home is owned by an owner who does not own more than 3 such homes at any one time, a real estate licensee is not involved in a transaction. The next bullet, no discriminatory advertising is used. So, I talked about one other legal case, Chicago Bar Association versus Quillen and Tyson. That was an Illinois Supreme Court case. States this, that we are not allowed to draft a contract. Only a lawyer could draft a contract. We're allowed to fill in the blanks. The only other case I want you to be familiar with, we're going to skip down a couple of paragraphs where it says Jones versus Mayer. Highlight, put an X by this one. So shortly after this law was passed in 1968, someone challenged it. So let me explain this case to you. This is Jones versus Mayer. So put an X by that one. Now here's the situation. This happened in a suburb of St. Louis. There was a mayor was selling his home, and he had a big sign in front of his property, home for sale, but to everyone except for blacks. Now, Jones is African American. Jones wanted to buy the home. Mayor says, I'm not selling to you. I'm using my exemption. I can use one exemption every 2 years, even though, and here's what the law states: race, color, religion, national origin, and sex. So Mayor says, I'm not selling to Jones. This went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And Mayor lost. Mayor had to sell to Jones. And the reason why, let me go back and I'll show you. The reason why he had to sell to them, even though you're allowed one exemption in the 1968 law against these protected categories, race, color, religion, etc. In 1866 says you cannot discriminate against race, and there are no exceptions under race. There are under the other protected categories, but never against race. That's what I want you to know. You can never discriminate against race. Now, didn't mean to do that. Let's go to the one paragraph right above Jones versus Mayer. Housing for older persons. Now, there is housing set aside for people over the age of 62, and they can advertise as retirement communities, and they don't have to let anyone in there under the age of 62. Now, something else you need to know. This is the law in Illinois. If you own an apartment building and 80% of your units are occupied by at least one person over the age of 55, and there are no children in the building now, you could say no children in the other unit. So let me give you, and I expect every single one of you to answer this question. I'm going to give you a state exam question, word for word on a state exam. So pay attention to this, and I expect every one of you to answer this question. You need to know this. I own a 4-unit apartment building, 4 units. On the first floor, I have a man. He lives there all by himself, and he is 85 years old. Second floor, I have a woman. She lives there by herself. She is 90 years old. Third floor, I have a married couple. They're each 95 years old, living on the third floor unit. The fourth floor is vacant. Right now, there are no children in this building at all. Can I say no children for the fourth floor unit? I'm going to repeat this question. State exam, word for word, And I expect every one of you to answer this, every one of you. First floor, I have a man. He's 85 years old, lives there by himself. Second floor, I have a woman. She's 90 years old. She lives in that unit by herself. Third floor, I have a married couple, just the two of them. They're each 95 years old. Fourth floor is vacant. There are currently no children in the building now. Can I say no children for that fourth floor unit? Well, I got 22 people. I only got 12 answers. I don't know. You know what? I'm trying to help you. I already know the answer, and I appreciate those of you that are cooperating with me because you need to know this information. I just gave every single one of you, and that's what I've been doing, for the past 4 or 5 weeks now, giving you questions that are on a state exam. But it looks like only some of you feel it's important enough to answer all of them. The answer is no. Why? 3 out of 4 units is 75%. Most of you got this correct. I cannot say no children. Must allow children in there. Okay, that's what did I say? Don't beat up yourself right now. The thing is, it's okay to make a mistake here. I guarantee if you got this question wrong now, you're not going to get this question wrong word for word. You will not get it wrong on a state exam. You understand that? Very tricky. Very tricky. As long as you understand this, that's all I want you to know. We're kind of split 50-50 on this, on yes and no. So the answer is no, because 3 out of 4 is only 75%. It must be 80%. That's the law. Now, Megan's Law, you can highlight those two. The last 2 paragraphs, you can put X by. I talked about Megan's Law. Megan's Law, sex offenders must register with the local police department. Again, do not go beyond your scope of authority to search for sex offenders in the area for your clients. Give them the website, let them go to the police department, let them do this on their own. First paragraph on the next page, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, ECOA. Remember, these are protected classes. I'm not too worried about these. Only 2 things I want you to know. We talked about this in chapter 6. You cannot discriminate against income if it's from any type of public aid, as long as they can get proof of that, and cannot discriminate against age, as long as they're over the age of 18. And they qualify. Now, ADA, Americans with a Disability Act. I'd like you to highlight at least the last 3 paragraphs of this page. Now, ADA, Americans with a Disability Act. Couple things you need to know. 1, anything that's open to the general public must be ADA accessible. Talking about theaters, restaurants, hotels, banks, real estate offices, they must be ADA accessible. Okay, that's one thing. And then Title I of ADA states this: if I have a company and I have more than 15 people working in my company and I hire someone that has a disability for the job, I must provide reasonable modification for that employee. Now, I have a couple other questions for you. I have a company. I have over 15 employees working for me. I'm looking for an accountant to work in my company. I need an accountant. So this guy has a disability and he applies for the job, but he doesn't have the skills necessary for this particular job. Would that be discrimination if I don't hire him? The answer is no. I can't hire someone. I'm looking for an accountant. Just because this guy has a disability, has no accounting skills whatsoever, I can't just hire anyone to mess with my books. It's not discrimination not to hire them, but I'm looking for an accountant to work in my company. I have over 15 employees, and this guy applies for the job and he has a disability. Now, I have to make reasonable accommodations to make sure this guy has equal, has a place to work. For example, he's confined to a wheelchair. I have to, as the owner of the company, provide a desk that could accommodate the wheelchair. I have to put in grab bars in the bathroom, make sure the bathroom door swings both ways, make sure he can maneuver his chair in the bathroom. I have to provide these things. But now, this guy applies for the job. He has the skills to qualify for the job. He's confined to a wheelchair. My office is on a second floor. There's no elevator in this building. Do I have to install an elevator? What do you think? Yes or no? So this guy qualifies for the job. He's confined to a wheelchair. My office is on a second floor. There's no elevator currently in the building. Do I have to install an elevator so he can have access to my office? Okay. Most of you said yes, which means most of you are wrong. The answer is no. Why? Installing an elevator is not reasonable. Installing an elevator is not reasonable. I can't hire this person because he has no way to getting up to my office. Now, another question, let me erase these off. I got a couple questions. No, not all properties have to be ADA compliant, built after a certain date. Yes, they have to be ADA compliant. Anything that's open to the public, yes. But this might not be open to the public. So the answer is no, I don't have to provide anything. I can't hire the person. Now, what if my office is not on the second floor? I only have like 3 or 4 stairs to get to my office. And there's no elevator in the building. You think I'm allowed to build a ramp so I could go up the ramp to my office? The answer to that is no. No. I'm going to tell you why in a moment. What if I got a couple big, strong guys in my office and they can just carry him? It's only a couple of stairs to carry him in his wheelchair up and down the stairs. Would that be okay? The answer is no. What if I saw it on TV, one of those stair, I don't know what they call it. It's a chair that the guy sits in the chair, picks him up a couple of stairs, and then what if I install one of those? Would that be okay? What do you think? The answer is no. I'm going to tell you why now. Hallways are designed, stairways, excuse me, are designed for safe evacuation in case of emergency. Putting a ramp or putting one of those chairs that slide against the wall might impede the safe evacuation of that property, of the people in that property. So the answer is no. Can't hire the person. I can't have a couple of my strong guys in there pick them up. What if they drop them? What if they hurt their back? It's too much of a liability. Don't have to hire that person. I want you to know that. So the answer is no. Now, let's go on to fair housing practice. Block busting. Highlight, put an X by it, something you're going to see. Block busting, also called panic selling. Alarming people that there's a racial change in the neighborhood. This used to happen caused by licensed real estate agents. You get a minority moving into a neighborhood, real estate agents will run around the neighborhood knocking on the doors. Hey, just want to let you know this minority person just bought the property down the block from you. You know what's going to happen as soon as they move in. The value of the home is going to go down. You need to list your home with me. Let's list it below market value and save your equity. You got 2 or 3 minorities moving out there. They really panic the neighborhood, pounding on the doors with both fists. Cannot do that. Black busing is illegal. Panic selling is illegal. They did that to us in the 70s in Roseland. Yeah, I know. I had a friend of mine that lived in Roseland at that time. Actually, it was West Pullman, but same thing. Same thing happened over there too. Do you think black busing goes on today? We're in 2020. Absolutely, it does. There's a woman here. Let me tell you the case. This happened in the state of Washington. This one woman, agent, real estate agent, she kind of, anyone that bought and sold in a certain subdivision, they will always go through as one person. So here's what happened. This happened last year, and she sold a home to African American family, first African American family to buy in this particular subdivision. She wanted to make them feel welcome to the neighborhood, so she took a picture of the family, sent it to everyone in the subdivision. Meet your new neighbors. Well, let me tell you what happened to her, the agent. She got fined $4.2 million and went to jail for that. See, it would have been okay for her to do that if she did it in the past. First time she ever did it. First time an African American family moved in. First time she did something like that. So, Chicago is one of the most segregated large cities in this entire country. Most major cities, they call them melting pots. Why? People come from all over the world and they all kind of blend together and melt together. They don't call Chicago a melting pot. I don't know if you know this. They call Chicago a salad bowl. See, when you make your salad, you throw in your lettuce, your tomatoes, your peppers, your onions, your croutons, whatever you throw in there. And then you toss and toss and toss your salad. And now you want to serve yourself. You don't like the onions, you can put everything, see, because the tomatoes are there and the peppers are there. You can pick out whatever it's there and put on your plate what you don't want. I mean, it doesn't mix. I was born in Chicago. I remember as far back as my memory could take me, I don't know how old, 5 or whatever. We saw alleys and railroads that would separate different races. Most major cities, a lot of them have a little Italy, they have a Chinatown. Chicago has a Chinatown. Chicago has a Korean village. We have a Vietnamese village. We have 2 little Italies. We have a Greek town. We have a Lithuanian community, a Polish, a Irish, African American, Jewish, Middle Eastern, Germantown. We have an area in Chicago that's predominantly Indian and Pakistani. Off of Devon. There's a lot of different. Chicago is broken down, and it looks like almost little countries. You could go and there's Puerto Rican neighborhoods, there's Mexican, they call it the Village, and over on 26th Street. There's some neighborhoods you could go into Chicago, which I kind of like this. Sometimes you think you're in a different country because the music's playing in their language. The writing on the windows is all in their language, and the foods in the restaurants and stuff like that. That's the way Chicago is. Chicago's very segregated, though. Still, our suburbs of Chicago are the most segregated suburbs of any community in this country, with the exception of a handful of neighborhoods in the city and a handful of suburbs. They're predominantly either one race or another. So. Someone says my internet died. When you said something about what if you were to die, nothing happened. Wow, that's a long time ago. If you were to die, that what I said was, if you were to die, listing agreements still exist. Why? The listing agreements between the sponsoring broker and the seller. That was a while ago. That's what I said. So, um, that's what it is. Okay, costs. Okay. Now, um, okay. It's, there are more. I teach fair housing. I mean, I teach it in continuing education. I teach it in this class. There's a lot of companies. I would say about once every 2 years, I will hit about at least 30, 35 real estate companies throughout the city and suburbs. They bring me in to do a class on fair housing because fair housing is not getting better. Discrimination cases have gone up. I've been tracking it since the year 2000. They've never gone down. Every year they keep getting worse and worse. They're getting the number of complaints are going up and up and up. A lot of it could be for different reasons. I mean, different protected categories. It's not just race, but a lot of it's for now. Disability seems to be the biggest thing growing right now. A lot of discrimination on that. So the thing is, it is a federal felony. You will go to jail for that. The fines are unlimited. So um, let's talk about steering. Highlight, put an X by that. Are you going to get a question on steering? Yes. It's called steering and channeling. So someone has a question. Are real estate agents? Yes, real estate agents are discriminated against. Um, as a manager, well, I haven't had it for a while, but I have gotten calls from people saying that they want to. I have had calls where people who want to sell their property, they want me to give them a name of an agent who is white and American. I says, let me tell you something. We all have the same type of training. We're all trained the same exact same way. And you're one person. I'm not going to recommend anyone to work with you. So just don't do business that way. But yeah, there are people that will not want to work with someone because of their accent or their color or something like that. It does happen. There was a case in Chicago. Well, there's a lot of cases. I dug them up. There's so many cases in Chicago. There was a guy called wanted to buy a home, called a major company near the downtown area, and the agent says you sound black and hung up on him. They were able to trace who the agent was, and they got fined $100,000. There was a big case that started maybe about 5 years ago. It started in the Bridgeport neighborhood. The house is in the 3200 block of South Normal, off of 32nd, off of 31st and Halsted, 3200 block of South Normal. Let me tell you what that case is about. There was a house that was on the market for 2 years, priced at 1.8 million. This guy wanted to buy this home. Showed up with his family. He had two young daughters at the time. About 10, 12 years old at the time. The guy who wanted to buy the house, his name is George Wilborn. George Wilborn is an African American. He's a radio personality. He's been in movies and stuff like that. He's African American. He came in with a price of $1.7 million, putting $700,000 down, more than qualified to finance the rest of it. And the owner looked up George Wilborn, saw he was African American, called up the agent, says, I refuse to sell to the African American family. Refuse. So here's what the agent did. Agent did a dumb thing. They took it off the market and says, told the other agent it's not for sale anymore. Waited 30 days, threw it right back on the market for the same price. Well, they filed a lawsuit against them. Now the agent who had the listing, he sells approximately $95 million worth of real estate a year. He makes millions of dollars a year, millions. He thought he was going to lose his license. Actually, had his wife go and get her broker's license because he thought he would either go to jail or lose his license and stay home with the kids or something. But he was able to buy his way out. They paid off the other agent. They made a settlement with George Wilborn. I don't know what the settlement was, but George Wilborn also filed a lawsuit with HUD, Housing and Urban Development. HUD does not take any lawsuit unless they know they're going to win. Currently, they have a 96% success rate in lawsuits for discrimination. That's what HUD has. The lawsuit's still going on. The guy dropped the price to 1.6 million, still can't sell it. It's to me, I saw the house from the outside, not from the inside. I didn't think it was very attractive, but there must be something on the inside. So this actually happened. The owner of the property, I don't know if anyone heard the name. The owner of the property, his name is Daniel Sabayas. By the way, I read the transcripts, I read the whole case and everything else. I read the deposition, so I know everything about this case. Daniel Sabayas was a seller. He still lives there. Maybe never heard of him, but his grandfather, Daniel Sabayas' grandfather, name was Fred Rohde. Fred Rohde. I don't know if you heard that name. Fred Rohde was the alderman of the first ward for over 50 years. He died in prison for corruption, as most politicians from Chicago, Cook County, and state of Illinois. As I said, they all serve 2 terms, while one in office and usually one in prison. Most of our politicians do that. Yeah, Shanice, that was awful. This was a bad thing. George Wilborn was more upset that his young daughters witnessed, experienced this thing. They thought they get a nice house and everything else, and then the guy doesn't want to sell to them. Now, this is just one case, but there's hundreds of cases like this going on all the time, just all the time. So, I'll tell you something else. Sometimes you don't even know. You have no idea where this discrimination is going to come from. I got to tell you, this happened to me. I want to tell you real quickly. This is years ago. I went to list a property. There was a woman that owned this property. She was about 85 years old. A very sweet woman. Her voice was like a church choir voice on there, nice and pleasant voice. And it was every time I went there a couple of times, and when I went there, it was like visiting grandma. She's baking cookies. She's walking around the house with a little watering can, watering her flowers around the house and stuff like that. So then I came in to list her property. And then I pull out the listing agreement. And the biggest print you see on the listing agreement, the biggest print lists all the protected categories that you cannot discriminate against. Well, I'd say this about her. I would say this woman did not discriminate. I would say she did not discriminate. You know why? She used every single ethnic slur there was. I'm telling you, she did not leave anyone out. She used I didn't know there was that many ethnic slurs out there, but she had them all. And here's what happened. The sweet church choir voice, 85-year-old grandmother, when she started seeing the protected categories that you can't sell to, you can't discriminate against, all of a sudden, the devil got into this woman. Her voice changed. She goes, I'm not going to sell. And all these ethnic slurs start spitting out of her mouth like a volcano. I was waiting for her head to spin around and for her to start crawling on the ceiling. I got scared. I get goosebumps now when I talk about this case. And this happened a long time ago. And I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, her voice changed, all the stuff coming out of this woman. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I thought I was going to die that day. I start grabbing my stuff off her table. I'm dropping things. I'm leaving a trail. I'm almost at the front door. All of a sudden, the sweet voice came back. Well, Sam, where are you going? We haven't had our tea yet. I says, no, I got to go. She takes a step towards me. No, you have to stay. I have to go. I left, I never went back there again. I was scared. I was really, I'm telling you, I was scared. Nothing ever scared me in my entire life like that. I don't know what the hell was going to happen. So I was happy I got out of there alive. You don't know where it's going to come from. You just don't know. I'm telling you, this is what I experienced. Now, let's talk about steering and channeling. Are you going to see that? Absolutely, you will. So I want you to be real familiar. Put an X by this one. Steering is channeling people into a neighborhood or into a building to rent. For example, I'll give you a couple examples. Um, Having a family with children rent an apartment in a building where more children are living in because it's close to the playground is channeling and steering. Having a renting and showing a single woman apartments for rent only on a second and third floor because you're thinking of her safety of her being on a first floor where someone can break in. That's channeling and steering. Now, question for all of you. State exam. I have a Hispanic couple walk into my office. They want to buy a home in Chicago. So I took them out. Since they're Hispanic, what I did, I only show them homes in the Humboldt Park community. Is that channeling and steering? Yes or no? I had this Hispanic couple come in my office. They say, we want to buy a home in Chicago. I took them out and I showed them homes. But I only showed them homes in one neighborhood. I took them only to the Humboldt Park community. Is that channeling and steering? I got a few more questions to ask. So the answer is yes, it is channeling and steering. Good, you got it right. You cannot do that. Now, another question for all of you. I have a Hispanic couple walk into my office. They says, we want to buy a home in Chicago, but we only want to live in the Humboldt Park community. So I took them out and I only showed them homes in Humboldt Park. Is that channeling and steering? But they're Hispanic. We says we want to buy a home in Chicago, but we only want to live in a Humboldt Park community. And so I only showed them homes in Humboldt Park. Is that channeling and steering? The answer, all of you got that correct because they said the answer is no, because that's what they wanted. They prefer that particular neighborhood. Okay, that's what they asked for. All right, I got another question for you. I have a Hispanic couple walk in my office. Sam, we want to buy a home in Chicago, but we are Hispanic and we only feel comfortable living in Hispanic communities. So I took them out and I showed them every single Hispanic community in the city of Chicago, whether it was on the north side, south side, west side, east side. I took them out and showed them every single Hispanic community in the city. Is that channeling and steering? Again, the question is, I have a Hispanic couple come in my office. They say, we want to live in Chicago. We're Hispanic. We only feel comfortable living in Hispanic communities, so only show us homes in Hispanic communities. And I took them out and I showed them every single Hispanic community in the city of Chicago, north side, south side, west side, east side. Is that channeling and steering? Is that discrimination? The answer is yes, it is discrimination. You know why? Who am I to decide what community is Hispanic and which communities are not Hispanic? See, what I'm doing is giving you or giving them, showing them homes, in my opinion, of what is a Hispanic community. I show them homes in this neighborhood, that neighborhood, that neighborhood, that neighborhood, not over here, not over here, because I don't think there's enough Hispanics there. What makes up a Hispanic community? I don't even know. Does anyone know? What makes a Hispanic? What's the number? Is it 5%, 10%, 50%, 90%? See, I'm giving them my opinion, what I think is Hispanic and what isn't. Cannot do that. They have to choose the neighborhood they want to live in, not me. They have to choose. I cannot decide what neighborhood is. It is subjective, what neighborhood is Hispanic or not. They have to tell me where they want to live, not me. All right, Alberto, you're saying based on stats, Humboldt Park, Pilsen, Little Village are the biggest. You left some communities out. I guarantee you left some communities out. Now you discriminate against those other communities. They have to pick out the neighborhood. Okay. I know, Alberto. But you're going to say a lot of Jewish people live in West Ridge too, because of the synagogues and stuff like that too. But then you discriminate against the Middle Easterns that live there. You're discriminating against the Irish that might be living over there too. Just cannot pick out the area for them. Here's a question for you. I have a African American couple walk in my office. They want to buy a home. Do I have to show them all the homes that we have for sale? Yes or no? They want to buy a home in Chicago. Do I have to show them all the properties, homes available in the city of Chicago? Yes or no? The answer is no. The answer is no. I only have to show them what they could afford, what they qualify for. Let's say this African American couple, they qualify for 300,000. Do I have to? It's a discrimination for me not to show them homes at $1 million? No, that's not discrimination. That's based on income. Do I have to show them homes at 500,000? Absolutely not. What about 350? Nope. What about 325? No. What about 305? No. Nothing over 300. They could afford 300. I had to show them everything they want to see up to 300. Otherwise, it's discrimination. It's what they could afford. Here's something else you might want to know. Someone walks in your office, they have no money saved, they have no job, they haven't filed taxes in 10 years. Let me tell you what you could do with them. You can throw them through the front window of your office. That is not discrimination. That is not discrimination. Chicago is a problem. Tremendous amount of discrimination does go on in the Chicagoland area, unfortunately. A lot of it's caused by licensed real estate agents. They think it's their job to decide where people should live. Now, let's go on to redlining. Highlight, put an X by that one. Now, years ago, here, let me show you something. Years ago, when you walked into a bank and they used to have a big map, and this is why they call it redlining. They used to have a big map when you first walk into the bank of the city of Chicago. And they call it redlining because they used to take a red marker and circle a certain neighborhood. If you live in that neighborhood as opposed to outside that neighborhood, they turn you down for the loan. Why? The racial makeup of these people in this red line area, they feel they're more likely to default on a loan. And they either would turn them down or charge them a much higher interest rate if you live just outside this neighborhood. That's redlining. Redlining is illegal. Do you think it goes on today? It sure does. There's a map. Maybe it's not on display, but there's a map. Okay, Shanice, you have a question here. Regarding the safety of a buyer, showing apartments on a second or third floor, for instance, isn't that looking out for the interests of the client? It's not your job to do that. You cannot decide what's for their safety or not. What if they're a cop? What if they have concealed carry weapon permit or whatever else? You don't know. You can't decide they'll be safer living on a second or third floor. You cannot do that. What if you do that to a guy, instead of a woman, a single woman? What makes the any safer for a guy? Then we should not have any apartments on the first floor. The answer is no, you can't. If he or she says, I don't want anything on the first floor, then that's fine. Now, here's something else. You got to be careful. You can't say things. We can't say things. People will ask you. I'm telling you, people are going to ask you, hey, is this a safe neighborhood? Yeah, you asked me, yeah, this is a safe neighborhood. The reason I told you this is a safe neighborhood, because every day in this neighborhood, they only have 2 drive-by shootings a day. So to me, that's safe. You know why? In my neighborhood, I have 7 drive-by shootings a day. This neighborhood, they only have 2. Well, what I think is safe and what you think are safe, or what you think is a safe neighborhood, are 2 different things. I'm giving you my opinion again, and that's what you cannot do. Now, intent and effect. If an owner, highlight put X by that one. If an owner or real estate licensee purposely sets out to engage in blockbusting, steering, or other unfair activities, the intent to discriminate is obvious. Well, then again, you will lose your license. You will go to jail. The fines are just unlimited. So now, enforcement of the Fair Housing Act. If someone felt they've been discriminated against, there are 3 things they could do on a federal law. 1, they could file a complaint with the United States Attorney General. They could file a complaint with HUD, or they could file a lawsuit in federal court. Now, they could do 1 out of the 3. They could do 2 out of the 3. They could do all 3 of them. Now, as far as enforcement of the Fair Housing Act through HUD, I'd like you to go over all these bullets on the rest of this page to the bottom of this page. Go over and read them all on your own. There's a couple more on the next page. Now, let's go to the Illinois Human Rights Act. Illinois has its own version of the federal fair housing law. Now, the Illinois Human Rights Act, we have 5 additional categories that I want you to be familiar with that we don't have under federal. So, on this next page here, page 307, under the Illinois Human Rights Act, it is a civil rights violation for any licensee to engage any of the following acts of discrimination. I want to point out the ones that we have under Illinois that we don't have under federal. So, race, color, religion, national origin, those are federal. But see the next one? Ancestry. Circle that one, ancestry. I'm going to write them down for you in a moment. Age, that's only Illinois. Ancestry, so far in age, is only Illinois. Circle that one. Now, sex is federal. Circle the next one, marital status. Now, physical or mental disability, that's federal. The next 2 circle, military service or unfavorable discharge from the military, that's Illinois, not federal. Familiar status, that's federal. But to circle the next one, sexual orientation. The others apply more to work now. So, Illinois Human Rights Act. The 5 categories I want you to know. Illinois Human Rights Act. So we have 5 categories under Illinois that we don't have under federal. marital status, you cannot discriminate if a couple's not married, age, as long as they're over the age of 18, military or unfavorable discharge from the military, ancestry. You might be born here, but maybe your parents or your grandparents, they were born in Mexico, they're born in Italy or Germany. That's your ancestry. You cannot discriminate against that. And under Illinois that we have these 5, sexual orientation. Gays and lesbians are protected under Illinois, not under federal. So that's what I need you to know. Now, this is this little house over here, this equal opportunity housing. It should be on your business cards, any advertising you put out, not the whole thing, but the house should be on every single bit of advertising. Actually, I'm going to talk about that in chapter 16. Now, you go over the rest of these bullets here also on your own. Here's something I never understood, I don't get. See this, after the second set of bullets, there's a line and a half, line and a half. It says that under the Illinois Human Rights Act, the Illinois Human Rights Act defines an elderly person as someone who is at least 40 years old. Based on that law, if you're elderly at 40, at my age, I am deceased. That I don't get. I don't even know what the hell that means. 40 at elderly. And right now, I know some of you are laughing about that. Now you feel old. You didn't feel old. You're 41. Now you feel old, right? Didn't feel old before this. Yeah, I see all the younger people think it's very funny. Don't worry, you're going to be there soon. Yeah, you can't retire. Let me tell you something, Alberto. You're 41. You're not retiring. You're just defined as elderly. Just want to let you know. Yeah, forget about getting benefits or discounts or retiring. I know. That's what the law is. Unbelievable. Here's the intent. Your rights to equal housing. Every office should have this on display. Implications for real estate licensees. Next couple of paragraphs you can highlight. I just want to say that discrimination is a real big problem. It is a big problem, especially in real estate. Again, you got to remember, people have a right to live wherever they want within their financial means. If someone does ask you, if they're listing their property with you, or they want to buy a property and they say they don't want to live, in certain neighborhoods, or they don't want to live in with certain type of people, you cannot work with those. You got to drop those people and say, what you're asking me to do is against the law. And then you can just go back to your sponsoring broker and you document everything. Okay. Just to protect yourself. So just want you to know. Again, people do have a right to live wherever they want within their financial ability, and that is it. There's nothing more to that. So let me tell you, you're going to get questions on discrimination. Absolutely, you will. I want to tell you this. If it sounds like discrimination, guess what? It is. If it sounds like discrimination, it is. Okay? And that's the end of chapter 13, or 14. So make sure you do the questions at the end of this chapter.